Welcome to the Flourish Frequency, the show where we activate and amplify the frequencies of success, joy, and abundance. I'm your host, Beth Larsen, a high-performance and quantum success coach. If you're ready to ditch the hard hustle and embrace a more effortless flow, then this is the show for you. Together, we'll tap into quantum thinking, harness the laws of the universe, and unlock the secrets to living a life of more. More joy, more energy, more passion, more money, and more meaning. No more simply surviving, we're going beyond thriving. It's time to flourish. The Flourish Frequency Show starts now.
Hey, everybody. I want to welcome you to the Flourish Frequency. This is Beth Larsen's show. I am so honored. I get to hang out with Beth as we really look at how to activate your energy and amplify your life. Why? Because this is a frequency that we're in right now. I mean, whether you're paying attention to not about how fast things are going or what the frequency of things are, we're in a new realm. It doesn't matter how you turn around. But now with the introduction of AI, we're really in a new dimension. And so what does that mean for all of us? As Beth knows, and the host of this fabulous show, she is all about being in the world to help all of us women flourish. But there's a frequency to it. And during this show and every show that Beth does and her coaching platform, and her high performance and quantum success platform. This is all about how we get to that place where we're no longer stuck. We can experience the slide and glide of life. We understand that this is a life where we can have more joy, more energy, more passion, more money, more meaning. It really is. You know, I've often thought about this, Beth, and, we've got a great show coming up here, Master Your Meta. I've already thought about this, in this world, right, over a period of time that I've been doing this show, I've noticed a couple of things, but I'm really glad about where we are now. I'm glad that we can use the word more. Why? Because we've gone through periods where there was a confusion around spirituality or how to be in life, and that it has to be about sacrifice. And it's always been baffling for me. So I want to start up with this. I know we're going to talk about mastering meta and how to be essential to flourish. But here's the confusion. Why would we have an incredible, ubiquitous, unending universe that just flourishes all by itself, and yet somehow we got the message that we have to play small? I don't really understand that. Do you?
No, not. I'm so glad you're bringing this up. This is like something I'm so passionate about because I think it is exactly what we are here on this earth for, is more. Like, it's an evolutionary impulse within us. The universe itself is constantly expanding, evolution, evolving, and expansion. That's what we're here for. And with that, that's just the nature of more, right? And I will say this probably on every single episode, because it's so important to me. You can't have more on a foundation of not enough. So if you're living in the space of not enoughness in any way, shape, or form, then it's missing the point of what more is really all about.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because part of the confusion for a lot of people is to try to create expansion of prosperity from a place of fear. You can't. Right. Fear. If fear is in your eyes, your mind's eye, if fear is that thing, gratitude can't get in there. So we get to choose. Now, today you're talking about meta. I love the term. I did a show not too long ago where I explained that metaverse did not come from this generation. And people were a little bit like, is what she's saying true? And I said, meta and metaverse comes from 4 generations ago on the incept of, or how should I say it, on the first creation of communicating with something other than a cup and a string.
Yes.
And the reason I said that is because if you go back to the 60s for a minute, all of you just play with me for a minute before we deep dive into meta. If you go back and start to read some of the books, for example, Dune right now is a big thing.
Yeah.
But many people don't realize that Dune and the entire series of books came from, I don't know, what is it, 59? I don't know what year, but it came through the 70s.
Yeah.
And it was so is this a word? Metaversy, right?
We'll make it a word.
Make it a word. But this word meta is really important, and it's not going to go away.
Yeah.
And from where you sit, when you say master your meta, we have to begin with the defining moment to describe meta, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
What
is meta?
What does it mean to you? Because it's a powerful word.
Very much. Yeah. And you hear people say, oh, that's so meta. What does that mean? I always look to the root of what words really are. Like, what does the word mean? Where did it start? What's the root of it? Where did it begin from? And, meta itself is a Greek term that means before or after. So it is that state of something that is bigger than, that it's an after, again, I'll say evolutionary. If you look at some words like metamorphosis, right? It's the morphing into something else completely different. It's a metamorphosis. So you're going beyond what you currently are, or metaphysical, beyond the physical, going into the non-physical. So, turning into that which you cannot see, or that which you cannot hear, but you can actually tune into it because it's frequency, right? Yeah. So frequency lives in metaphysical, metacognition, going beyond the thoughts, and recognizing that, I'm sure everybody on your channel here has always heard that we are spiritual beings living in a human existence. And what does that mean? It means that we have a body, but we're not our body. We have thoughts, but we're not our thoughts. We have emotions, but we're not our emotions. We're here experiencing all of those things. We're on this journey that, we have a car, but we're not the car. We're not the vehicle. We're the driver. We are the one that can witness all of it. And to me, that's the essence of meta, is beyond just the physical, beyond just the thoughts, beyond just the emotions.
I so love it. Now, look, I remember when Tom Cruise did the movie, which was quite controversial for its time, but he so wanted to do the Minority Report. Yeah. He so wanted to do it. And I'm so glad he did do it. But it was one of those movies that was like, I don't know if you could say a movie like that was ahead of its time. It was, right? Mm-hmm. And it was the first time people heard metacognition.
Yeah.
But then they saw it.
Yeah.
And so where we are, and this is my question to you, where we are in the context of personal growth, are we creating new ideas, new concept? Let's just call it metaconsciousness. That's a term I love to use. I don't even know what that means. But are we creating metaconsciousness now to describe the fast pace by which we're going in the meta evolution of all of us, the body, the mind, the spirits, the emotion? Is this what we're doing?
Yeah. And when you say meta consciousness, to me, that's beyond the consciousness. It's beyond your own consciousness to the superconscious, right? To tapping into the consciousness that's out there, that's where all those ideas actually are. Are we creating them, or are we tuning into all of it that's already there? That's in existence, and we're tuning in finally because we're in higher frequencies. We've gone beyond just the frequency of the everyday life that we live.
Yeah,
by tuning into something bigger.
Let's talk about this in the context of personal and professional growth for a minute, because I think that we're now in a place where we're using language, new concepts. And I love what you did when you're unpacking the word meta and you're giving us these examples. I mean, metamorphosis, the word has been around, so I don't even know how long, right? Like a long time. What do? We use that to describe a butterfly, I think sometimes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And we're now turning into a new level of, I don't even want to say consciousness, but I want to call it a new level of mind evolution. See, I believe we're on a mind evolution journey. Yeah. And although we're only using fractions of our potentiality, especially with all the billions and billions of light years of wiring we have in our brain, we're now getting growth spurts fast and furiously. But what you're bringing to the table is what we're not talking about. And that is the flourish frequency around this. You see, we can flourish and still get nanoseconds of meta stuff into our brains, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the higher the frequency and the higher you're tuning in. And for me, that flourish frequency is a frequency that you're tuning into that is the one that's beyond where you're currently at, right? And flourishing is a state of it's a continuum. Like it gets to keep happening. Again, just like the more, right? It gets to keep happening. So you tune into it. And when you're tuning into it, then the world around you is starting to tune into you. Does that make sense? Like
yes, it does.
It starts calibrating. It starts to resonate with your frequency when you're tuning into it. But you have to go beyond your current level to start to tune into the next iteration of it.
Yeah, because the word frequency, well, first of all, the word flourish is dynamic.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of language that we use for something that is static and non-moving.
Right.
You see, the very nature of the word calls something into action.
Right.
Whether it's a garden that you see flourishing. But we're talking about ourselves. And now let's put it together. When we're talking about a frequency of something and the flourish frequency in the context of this, how does this ripple itself in the infrastructure of corporate America, let's say? Because so often, and we've been through this, I mean, we have gone through decades of scarcity development. And it is a wonder that anything is still up and running and growing. Now, the companies that have popped up, those CEOs, those companies, they just keep flourishing.
Yes.
I have one in mind that I won't mention, but everybody knows what it is. You want to order something, you go to their website, right? You want a movie, you may go to their website.
Yeah.
But this is beyond an initial vision. This is one of these things that exponentially keeps growing.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about this. Is this now a new way to talk about meta? Is this a new way to talk about meta in the context of a leader or a CEO that holds a vision? Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I come from a corporate background as well. I know you do too. And I've had the great fortune to work with an amazing leader and also not so amazing one. I've seen one that practiced meta so powerfully. And it was the reason why our company flourished. Definitely, even during a downturn in the economy, we were still flourishing. And why? Because this was a leader who could so clearly hold the vision, create vision, hold vision, cultivate creativity amongst the ranks, and didn't get himself stuck down in the weeds, just focusing on solving problems all the time. Because that's a very different structure, right? That is a problem-solving structure. And leaders who do that end up just creating problems to solve all day. Yeah. This particular leader that I'm thinking of, the one that was so practiced meta so powerfully, he was able to swoop down into the weeds just long enough to have the conversation with someone, but then right back up into the vision and get everybody refocused on the vision. Where are we going? What are we creating? What's next? And that to me is, that the most powerful CEOs are the ones who are doing that.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, in the world we live in today, if you're an entrepreneur, that is the world you have to live in. And, for somebody like me, I find myself, each of us have a role. Linda is the problem solver. Yeah. She is the one that can get in there and solve the problems. I dance between holding the vision, creating the vision, and stepping in. Unfortunately, when I really don't belong there, because you're right. Anytime I step in the weeds, guess what I get? More weeds, and not let the people try to solve the problem. And I think this is part of adjusting, the systems in place. But I want to ask you this when we go back from break.
Yeah.
Because we are now, whether we like it or not, this is me talking. So I want to hear what you say when we come back from break.
Okay.
I do believe we are being forced, situationally forced into the world of metacognitive abilities. And when we come back, let's talk about what that forcing looks like. Yeah. What does that mean that sounds so painful, but it's not painful if you've grown up with it. It's painful if you have to adapt to it. Yeah. If you are using a technology that all of a sudden now has AI popping up everywhere and you don't even know that's AI. Right. When we come back, let's talk about that. But Beth, before we go, how do people find out more about you? Let's tell them how they can work with you, how they can connect with you.
Yeah, definitely. Go to my website, BethLarsenCoaching.com. That's Larsen with an E-E-N. And you can find on the Work With Me page, you can find the various ways to work together, one-on-one coaching, the membership, the different workshops I offer, etc. So, yeah.
When we come back, here's the question for everybody that I want you all to think about if you could. Are you ready for it? Do you even know that every day you are enhancing your metacognition? Do you know you're doing that? When we come back, we'll tell you why that's happening and how it's happening, even if you don't realize it's happening. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Flourish Frequency. This is the show that the most incredible host, Beth Larsen, does. The show is about how to activate your energy. Why? You're going to hear why today, but it's more than that. If you activate your energy, where are you focusing it? Are you focusing it to amplify your life or diminish your life? Okay, that's going to probably be another show. But where are you directing this? Today, Beth, what you're taking on is the conversation about master your meta, META, to unlock your more. Before the break, what I said, I made a statement, but I want you to weigh in on it. Yeah. Kicking, screaming, or being born into the world of meta, one way or another, it is stretching us. It is stretching us. Is it stretching us in a way to enhance our metacognitive abilities? And if so, should we just embrace it? Or can I still kick and scream?
Well, you can go kicking and screaming, but that's just the painful way about going about it. It's the resistance to it, actually, versus if you go all in with it, if you allow yourself to be pulled forward, you don't have to be forced into it. When I'm working with somebody on metacognition, it's one of the first things I actually work with people on is how do you cultivate that state of metacognition? How do you start to notice what you're noticing? So you're not going through life sleepwalking, right? You're not just in your life, but you're actually observing and you're directing where you want it to go. You're creating it as you go because you're enjoying the experience. But if you're not awake, and that word gets tossed around a lot these days. If you're not awake, if you're not actually noticing it all, you're going to get the rude awakening, right? Because that desire that you have is out there and the universe is trying to guide you towards it. And if you're resisting it, that's when it's painful. You're going to be kicking and screaming and you're going to get the rude awakening. And it's going to show up in, some manifestation of something you don't want, a breakup, a health scare, job loss, money crisis, whatever. Yeah. If you're awake and if you're noticing what you're noticing and you're tuning in to something, beyond the physical and tuning into those frequencies, then you get to actually allow yourself to be drawn into it and enjoy the journey, go on the joyride of it instead of, being miserable, falling asleep and hitting the rumble strips on the side of the road, right? Being jolted awake.
I love that you're talking about, let's just get down into this because this is really important. And this cuts across everything we do in life. I really do believe that. And that is awareness is everything. Look, I always prepare for these shows, so I always know what we're going to talk about. And it's always interesting how what I pick up from this enters into my life. So I knew we were going to talk about this. So I was coaching someone in my sport. And these are beginners, but they all want to learn how to do the fast spinny ball. They all want to do, in my profession of table tennis, it's called the looping and spinning the ball. They all want to learn, even before they can even hit the ball. So I stopped fighting it. I stopped fighting it. I stopped fighting an old paradigm of you must learn this before this. And what I realized is that there was a lack of awareness of what that even meant. And so what do you train people on? You don't train them on how to play like your top 3 players in the world, right?
Right.
But I was made aware that no one understood that when you spin the ball, you barely brush the ball.
Yeah.
Weren't even aware of it. And I was thinking about this as I was looking at this, because we get so down in the weeds of something, we forget the basics and the fundamentals. And I want to ask you about that. If we're in the weeds, what the bleep are we missing? Whether it's a sport, your bank account, your corporate job, your family life, your children. If we're in the weeds, and I mean in the weeds of our day to day, there's got to be something we're missing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're missing, well, again, what's happening is we're tuning into just solving all the problems in our life, right? And that's a miserable life, because you just keep creating more problems. And it's not fun. It's not flourishing. It's not fulfilling. It's not meaningful. I mean, your entire meaning becomes about problem solving. And unfortunately, in this day and age, many of us get a dopamine hit out of solving problems, right? So it's like the fact that we've solved something gives us a sense of accomplishment, but we're missing the greater fulfillment in life, and we're missing the evolution. Like you're not evolving past just being a problem solver in your everyday life. And again, that's what Flourish is all about. There's so much more than that.
Yeah.
So tuning, by being in the weeds, we're missing the subtleties. We're missing the cues that we get from our own emotions. I personally believe our emotions are our guidance system. They're there to direct us when we are tuning into a truth, like a higher truth, versus just a truth as we know it, a truth that we've been programmed to believe. And the guidance, if you tune into it, will tell you when you're buying into truth versus truth as you know it. And it will allow you to, if you're really tuning in and saying, this feels crappy, so I'm going to take that to mean that I am tuning into a truth as I know it. But what's a higher truth that might be possible for me?
Yeah.
And if you're willing to start choosing that truth, not believing it right away, but choosing it, eventually you'll believe it, and you'll start to live into it, right? And if you did believe it, how would it make you feel, right? Your emotions, again, right there, are trying to tell you that's the higher truth. If I did believe it, it would feel amazing. It would feel flourishing. So that must be the higher truth. So let me keep choosing it. And that's a process, like you can't do that without metacognition, because you're just feeling your feelings, or worse, for many of us, we've numbed out to the feelings altogether, the emotions. So we can't even use it as guidance. So if you are not letting yourself feel your feelings, and you're feeling them and you're just in them and not noticing what they are and noticing the thought that's creating the feeling, then you can't change it. You can't there's no metamorphosis happening.
Yeah.
Just
we're trapped in a self-made prison. We're literally trapped in the self-made prison. And I think what you're talking about, the Flourish has a frequency, and that's the show, Flourish Frequency. It has a frequency, and that frequency is very natural. It could be very natural. And so what we're talking about today is we have a choice, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even though awareness is everything, after awareness, there's some things we got to make a decision about, right?
Yeah.
But if we're aware that there are some frequencies, some ways of being, the metacognition of things that will help us As a gentleman I studied with, designed the construct of flow, when he would talk about flow, you would hear him talk about it. And, back then when I was hearing him talk about it, I thought this is not realistic. I mean, honestly, that's what I was in his class, and I'm like, okay, but I'm here today and I'm telling you that is a state that you just described beautifully.
Yeah.
Where the world is light, where things are easy, where the ease by which we know step one, step two allows us to create the energy to continue to flow and grow.
Yes.
And that's what I think you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
But in order to do it, you now have just brought up the missing link. You really did. Metacognition. I want to ask you this question. In the world we're living in today, I've heard different panels talk about different things, especially about the concern that we will lose our ability to be evolving metacognitively. I don't believe that.
Right.
I don't believe that. And I want to talk about that because flourishing, technology, metacognition are not at odds with each other. Are they?
Yeah.
Tell me.
I don't believe they are. I don't. I'm a fan of AI. I believe it is one of the most brilliant brainstorming tools that you can use if you're using it to stimulate creativity and to see beyond what you can see, right? If you only have a small little box that you see the world through, and there's an infinite universe out there of possibilities. So when you tap into that, you're tapping into something beyond what you currently are at. But if you're not using it from a place of metacognition, right? If you're not noticing what you're noticing, and if you're not realizing that you're still the one guiding and directing and asking the questions, right? And with AI, that's the big thing, right? Prompt engineering. Ask it. The quality of the question determines the quality of what you get back from it. That's the whole point. Who's asking the question? Who is it? It's not just the thoughts in my head. It is the consciousness that can actually observe what is it that I want to get out of this? What's the end result? What's the vision that I'm looking for? And what kind of a question? How can I ask from a place of curiosity? I think it stimulates curiosity.
Yeah.
It stimulates creativity. If you're using it with that awakened mindset, right? Yeah. If you're not, and you're just using it blindly, you can get caught up in it and you can depend on it. And
that's what I was saying to you.
Yeah.
And I may not have said it that everybody's going to agree with me, but we are being forced.
Yeah.
in a way. I mean, strong language, but I don't really know how else to say it. But the very nature of something as AI, it's like the cell phone, Beth. One day there was no cell phone. The next day there was cell phones everywhere. I mean, that's literally how that technology popped up. One day there wasn't, one next day there was, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, you could not get on board.
Yeah.
You had to get on board. So that was one of these things, right? That was a meta that happened. And you either got on board and went with the flow, or you pretty much didn't go anywhere. And what I think you're talking about now, and what I love about this, it's not that we're speeding up. It's that we're expanding the opportunities to become more creative. That's what an AI is, or AI in the world as it's being presented. So I want to ask you this question about it. And again, to your point, we have to learn better questions. So isn't it, in fact, forcing us to really learn a bit more about metacognition, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The question I would have for you is, what's the thought for you that makes it feel like you're being forced?
Yeah. And I use that term for anybody out there kicking and screaming, because that's the way people feel in their gut, right? Yeah. I remember we did a study in 2019 when we were going to launch AI for the stove. And we came out with one of the first AI apps to discuss. We couldn't implement it because AI hadn't evolved.
Right.
We would have had to develop our own AI, and we started to. And
Wow.
I just said, table it. We're just going to wait. But we ran the focus groups. And Beth, what happened in the focus groups, it was fascinating to watch because it was exactly what you were talking about. We introduced a niche of the population, the LOHAS niche, the holistic niche, the $550 billion market to AI and soul in the same word. And when we come back, I want to talk about that, because just the introduction and an idea was enough to get the questions asked that were never asked before. When we come back, meta mastery. This is something that if you really want to know more about and you want to get, I'm just going to say to everybody, getting in front of this is probably the most powerful thing you can do, not just for you and your career, but for your family, because it won't be long before your kids have a whole new language that you may or may not understand. They already have a whole new way of thinking. I mean, look at the generations, look at the Greta Thunbergs of the world. What do you need to know to become a meta master? By the one and only Beth Larsen. Let's take a short break, everybody. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. Beth, before we continue, we're about to really talk about practical steps to meta mastery, but it's just more than this. It's more than a show. I want people to know that this is not just something we're chit-chatting about. This is an integral part of your coaching platform, of what you do, whether you're working with people in organizations or groups. You're working with women mostly, and you're working really to help with the high performance initiative, let me call it. And what does that even mean? It means that we set goals for ourselves. And the term high performance is a little bit misleading, because for some of us, high performance on some days is getting out of bed. Okay, that's my high performance moment. But this is what you're doing. You're creating a coaching platform and an initiative to help us understand that meta is not going away, but there is a mastery that's necessary. How do people work with you? How do they find out how to get ahead of the curve on this?
Yeah, definitely. So again, my website is BethLarsenCoaching.com, Larsen with an E. If you're interested in learning more, I offer both one-on-one coaching, but I do also have a membership program. And every month I do a meta mastery workshop. And it is on some topic that is above and beyond, right? That's tapping us into next. So I highly recommend attending one of those if you want. You don't have to join the whole membership. I do a drop-in rate for those. Or you can be part of the membership and also take advantage of our planning session and the monthly breath work, which I call somatic magic. So those are a variety of the different ways that we can work together and learn more about this.
So I want to thank you, first of all, for setting up this platform. And I want to tell you why, and then I want to ask you to walk us through the steps. There were many of us that are very grateful we're here after the past 4 years. We're really grateful. But there are also some of us like me that knew without tapping into the meta we're talking about today, this company would not have existed. It wouldn't be here. And every time I say that, I never have enough time to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it today because you're going to explain it. But there are things that we can tap into at the best of times and especially at the worst of times. And if we master this, there is no best, there is no worst. There's just flourishing, isn't there?
Right. Absolutely. And that's why, for me, this topic of meta mastery, it's foundational to all of my work. It's like I said before, it's one of the very first things that I start to work with somebody on, is just getting them to the place of being awake and noticing what they're noticing, so they're not just sleepwalking through life. Sleepwalking is not flourishing. Sleepwalking is just existing. And you may thrive from time to time, but it's not that flourishing place, and it's not going above and beyond. So yeah, it's very foundational for me. And it begins truly with honestly taking time every single day to notice your thoughts. Just start noticing your emotions. that you're feeling. Notice when you're having a really great day and what's that emotion? What is it? What would you use to describe it? Notice it when you're feeling really down. And what would you describe that? Is it sad? Is it grief? Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it irritation? Notice it. And then see if you can notice what are the thoughts that are creating those feelings. What were you thinking about? What is the thought that's making you feel that way? Because it isn't the circumstance itself that's making you feel that way. It's whatever the thought is that you're having about it. Circumstances on their own are just very neutral generally, right? But it's whatever our interpretation of something is. You know, you were talking before about we're going to be forced into the world of AI. Well, that's because there's a belief system, a thought that's thinking that makes it feel forced. For me, it feels like I'm being drawn into it in a really exciting way. But that's just because I have a different thought that I'm thinking around it, a different belief system that's running around it. Yeah. And so for me, it's exciting and it like pulls me into it. And then for somebody else, it could be complete dread and, oh no, I'm never going there. And so again, it's understanding and waking up to just what are my thoughts and emotions telling me? And do I want to continue to listen to that belief? Do I want to continue to choose it? Because for those of us who are adults, we now have the cognitive ability and the critical thinking skills to accept or reject something. We didn't have it growing up, you know, when we were being programmed from the ages of 0 to 7 up to, teenage years, when all that programming was just being placed in us as far as what to believe and what to think. But now we do. So you can disconnect from just thinking it and instead start to actually notice the thought and then ask, do I want to try something different? Am I willing to? Am I willing to, notice that there's a little fear cropping up when I even think about trying something different? Yeah. Notice your breath.
Notice your breath. Let's talk about the breath because I love this topic. You know, I'm like you. I look at the world and I'm like super excited about some of the things. What I've noticed, and I want to talk to you about it because I think we're seeing this real time. I know in the people I work with, probably you, what we're seeing real time is this resistance that once was. Let's just talk about that. Resistance that once was, especially to AI. And when I say forced, it's language that I've heard people use 6 months ago. Now, those same people are like, hey, I just did a whole Word document with AI. And so I've never seen, I've seen things catch on really quickly in my lifetime. Yeah. But nothing quite like this that went from the curse of technology. Really, AI, that's the Terminator movie. Yeah. Got it? To now becoming so super amazingly popular. Yeah. That the stigma of it is almost gone. Yeah. What do you attribute that to? That I don't think I'm oversimplifying it, but I'm just seeing the flourish frequency happen in the realm of AI.
Well, it brings up actually a really important conversation because the stigma changes also because of programming, right? And the amount of programming that's happening out there, whether it's the news or it is other social media or it's friends and family that you're witnessing, seeing, that you're surrounded by, you're still getting programmed, right? And so again, even as all of that starts changing and people start moving into it and embracing it, that also got programmed in. So were you consciously leaning into it and deciding that you wanted to do it, or were you just getting swept up into it by the program? And you'll also see a lot of people now programming on the news about all the dangers of AI and all of that going in. It's like, that's what the news does, is that's their whole job. That's why it's a program, news program, right? They're programming us. So I think more than ever, it's important that we're waking up and again, making these decisions for ourselves. What do I want to believe about it? And it is happening at an exponential rate because the vast majority of people are getting programmed. Right. Yeah. So it's taking you there. You're getting caught up in it. And not you specifically, but many people are just getting caught up in it. And it does have an exponential effect. It compounds the energy. So it speeds up over time. I mean, there's a whole compounding process that goes on in the brain, and we could go, that's a whole nother show, right?
Well, yeah. But back to your point, when we talk about the steps to meta mastery, it begins with noticing, and it begins with being aware. And I'm just talking about things I'm aware of now that I wasn't aware. So it begins with these conversations, but I want to talk with you about this as well. It also begins with noticing how we're feeling.
Yes.
The feeling thing. So a lot of times we talk about the thinking thing, but when you're talking about metacognition, you can't leave emotions out, I don't think. Can you?
No. Well, like I said, for me, I believe that the emotions are our GPS. I believe we were given emotions as spiritual technology that is there to guide us to knowing what truth is versus truth as we know it. Coming back to the higher truth. And once I started living my life that way and actually using my emotions as intelligence, we hear the term emotional intelligence all the time. What does that really mean? You know, your emotions have intelligence. They are giving you information. So what are you doing with the information? If you've tuned out from it, or you're not even paying attention to it, or you numbed out from it, you're not getting the intelligence. So you can't use it to guide you towards, the desire that you're going for, that you actually have decided and declared to the world. I am decided that this is my juicy dream and I'm going to go for it. Okay, my guidance now is going to guide me to that. But if I'm tuned out from my emotions, it's like driving on a road trip and you don't have the GPS, and God forbid you have to go back to a map, like an actual map, or you just can start to tune in and start just driving wherever you want and just decide to enjoy the journey no matter where it takes you. All of those are different options, right?
I love this. I want to keep going here. I'm going to talk about the juicy dream now, and I want to talk about how to bring this full circle, because when you bring it full circle, Flourish is about flourishing, expanding, growing, manifesting. And this is what I love about what you do. You don't shy away from it. But let's bring it together, because when we take a look at this from your perspective and the new narrative that you're creating around this, the question mark is this going to help me manifest what I want, Beth? Is this going to take me to the place I want to go? And I know you know the answer, but tell us how.
Yes. Yeah. Well, again, remember that when you are trying to manifest something, what you're really chasing after is a feeling. It is an emotion. There's a feeling that you're chasing after, that whatever it is you think that thing is going to give you. The things are the byproducts of the feelings. So when we come back to just letting ourselves feel the feelings and tuning into the frequencies and feeling them, then everything else becomes the byproduct of that. So in order to manifest your more joy, more energy, more passion, more money, more time, more meaning in your life, it's tuning into the feelings first and allowing yourself to experience them. And you can't do that if you're in it, right? Like if you're in the weeds, you're just in the weeds and you're not observing, and you're not making the conscious decision to change the thought, to choose a different thought, to notice your feeling, to breathe deeper. We were talking about breath just briefly there, but that's one of the things you got to notice. Notice when you stop breathing, when you're shallow breathing, because you've got to keep your eye on the vision. You've created this juicy dream. If you listen to that episode, because that's all about creating a juicy dream, but that comes from the heart, from your true desires. So it's not so much, I believe, that it got created, but that it's been, it's a seed planted in your heart, that juicy dream. So that juicy dream wants to be stewarded forward. And you can't do that if you're down in the weeds. You've lost sight of the dream, right? And then the dream goes on the back burner, and you're just caught up in everyday life solving problems. Now, in order to have that life of more and to tune into the Flourish frequency, you've got to keep your eye on the juicy dream. Keep your heart on it, really, and notice when you've gotten off track with it, and that you get to decide the meaning of what you want to make things mean in your life. That's another piece of metacognition. What do I want to make this mean? Right? Notice what you're making things mean in the first place and how that makes you feel, and what do you want to make it mean? Because when you start to decide what you want things to mean, it actually gives your life more meaning, right? Deeper meaning. the meaning that you want, not just what you think it means.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece of this that's so important as going for more is when you can handle more, you can have more in your life. And you are the meta, right? Your body, your thoughts, your emotions, those are all the vehicle and the navigation systems for the journey. But you are the meta, you're the driver, not the vehicle. So if you fall asleep at the wheel, you've lost it. You're back in the weeds again.
Yeah. I'm so grateful. I grew up with a mom, my second mom, my stepmom. I grew up with a mom that lived in the world of possibilities. She's amazing. And whenever we hit a rough spot, I'm just going to call them rough spots. She'd always say, I'm going to tell you girls, she had a Southern draw. She would say, I'm going to tell you all, I'm going to tell you. And this was her spiritual practice. She said, God has not given us anything we can't handle. It is not, and she would just tell us this over. You're never going to get in life anything you can't handle or excel or exceed. Never. You're never going to get it. And she was so strong about that. She didn't say maybe. She said never. You're never going to get it. So ingrained in our brains as us three girls was this, oh, I broke my leg. Too bad. I'm going to be able to handle it. And I think this is what we're talking about with this frequency. If we could understand what you just said, and be that level of aware, become the observer, and not the thing. See, it's one thing to observe the weeds; it's another thing to become the weeds.
Yes.
And if we're in the weeds too long, they grow, and they're not weeds anymore; they're tall grass, and we can't see our way out of them. And I think this is what you're saying. But now you're saying there's something new we really can learn, and that's metacognition.
Yeah. Yeah. And not just learn it, practice it. Going back to the concept of emotions for a second, we have a right to every single emotion, all of them, the good, the bad, and the ugly ones, right? We have a right to all of them. In metacognition, when you're noticing what those emotions are, part of what you get the choice of, because again, you have choice once you start to notice things. When you're in it, you've given away your choice. You've given away your free will. You've just become whatever is getting thrown at you. But when you're practicing metacognition, you take back your free will and your ability to choose, and you can notice, what those feelings are, and you can decide how long do I want to stay feeling like this. Like I can be justified that I have a right to grieve right now if I've lost somebody really important to me. And at some point, though, do I want to go beyond the grief? There's the meta. Do I want to go beyond it? And do I want to celebrate the life that we had, or the life that or all the accomplishments that person brought, or all the good that they did? Do you turn grief at some point into celebration? That is an act of alchemy in many ways. If you just get so caught up in the grief and can never see beyond, you end up living that life, right? And giving away so much of your time and your energy and your freedom to enjoy. And that's just an extreme example, I think. But
it's a good one. It's a really good one because it takes up so much space. And I don't mean just space. I mean emotional, physically, spiritually, and mental space. Grief hits all of those.
Yeah.
And hard. And you're right about it. I mean, how long can one go before we're completely depleted? But I love the inquiry part of metacognition. Yeah. I love it. And I love the way you're coming about it. Now, you're not just talking about this. You're now offering classes. You have membership. There are ways people, even if there's something they've heard today and they're thinking, I don't even know where to begin. Isn't this part of what you're doing to lay out a game plan for people to learn? Take one step at a time to really learn how to master this. And this is the gateway to not just flourishing once in a while, but living the flourish frequency life. Isn't this what we're talking about?
Yeah, because it's a life, right? And I'll say again, we have a right to every single emotion out there, which means this is a journey. This is not about you're trying to live in the perfect world all the time and you're not experiencing. Life is experiencing all of it, right? It's how you go through the journey. That is the whole point. The destination isn't something you're getting to, it's something you're living from. And if you're living from it miserably, then then that's where meta needs to come in, right? Because you have so much available to you to change the way you're experiencing the journey, to turn it into a flourishing state of being on a regular basis. And knowing there's going to be times you dip into the different areas. How long do you live there, though?
Yeah.
Is it your permanent residence? Or is it just a pit stop on the journey?
Yeah. Beth, when I did my research, I didn't know I was researching something so agonizingly sad. I didn't at the time. I was on a mission to figure out why corporations were doing what they're doing. But I didn't understand that psychological contract violation was so painful and so frequent. And when I did these interviews, I had a great committee, but they worked me to death. I'm just saying. I couldn't just do like a simple study. It was interview hundreds of people, Pat, because nobody's talked about this before.
Yeah.
I was so depressed. I still to this day have 1,200 pages of interview notes. And it really goes to your point. People were carrying things that happened to them a decade ago. Yeah. And when they talked about it in current times, they cried. Here's what they said. And this is why the role that you have is so important.
Yeah.
We think we can do it all by ourselves. I came in as a researcher and I listened to these people. I kind of got in trouble. This was supposed to be a 20-minute interview, but my first interview went an hour. And so I had to make every interview an hour because people felt invisible. And what you're offering here is a depth of understanding and connection with people at a level that they don't ask to share at. See, that's what's brilliant about what you're doing with meta and metacognition. People are not given permission to enter this realm and express themselves. And now you've opened the door for that. I want to thank you for that. But tell people how you're opening the door. What have you created? What is it in your coaching? How is your membership work? I understand people can participate at different levels. Tell us how you've opened the door.
Yeah. So the membership itself, I offer 3 workshops a month with. One is a focus, forecast, and flow session that's all about planning and forecasting for the month ahead. Then I have the Meta Mastery session, which is a workshop that is about a topic that is going beyond, right? So it's not just on the concept of meta. One of the workshops was actually about this whole topic and the concept of meta so far this year. But each workshop is something about something above and beyond, that's going to facilitate that state of flourishing. And then I have a monthly somatic magic session, which is a 9D breath work and healing frequencies that are delivered during that session as well. And that, to me, that is 3 parts of what create a flourishing life, right? Being able to forecast ahead and cast your vision for the future, then being able to actually tap into the frequencies and then releasing the stuff that's getting in the way, that's tying you down. That's what breath work is so powerful for.
Oh, it's incredible.
So any of those are available as a drop-in for $55, or the membership itself is $88 a month, and you get all 3 sessions. So
I want to make a comment on breath work for everybody. See, this idea of breath work, for those of you out there, you've heard it. And I know many of you because you've called me. I've done a couple of shows where I've talked about this in terms of athletes, and you've called me. And what I've said to you is breath work is not for 2% of the population. When we talk about breath work, every key athlete in the world, everyone that you see out there practices this. You see, the people that you think are just showing up and making that 3-pointer, or maybe if you're a soccer player, you just kick that goal. Breath work is an instrumental part of their life, and there's a reason. And maybe you'll do a show and we can talk more about it.
Absolutely.
How many breaths a minute? Can you breathe at the state of 13? Or are you at 28?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried breath work without having your lips closed? Hello. But this is really instrumental. If you're going to step into the metacognition realm, you have to learn some other tools, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is a beautiful show topic. So
I love it.
I'm on it.
Yeah. And by the way, you ever wonder why Michael Jordan's tongue is always sticking out? Yeah, it's breath work. Beth, please let us know how we can find out more about you, how they can connect to your workshop. And thank you for this topic. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's www.bethlarsencoaching.com. Go to the Work With Me page. You'll see all the different options there, as well as if you want to do one-on-one coaching, there's a consultation opportunity there too. And if you do want to drop in to one of the workshops, you can take 20% off your first workshop with code TN20 just for Transformation Network listeners. So
TN20?
TN20.
I love it. Thank you. Sierra, thank you for pushing all the right buttons. Beth, again, thank you for a great show. And it's Beth Larsen with an E, everybody. With an E. I can't wait till we do the breathwork show. That's going to be totally, totally fun. Thank you, Beth. Thank you all for tuning us in, turning us on. And remember, metacognition is not an extreme auxiliary power. Every single one of us has it built in. Beth's going to show you how to bring it out. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Flourish Frequency Show with me, Beth Larsen. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and are leaving with a heart full of inspiration and a mind buzzing with the possibilities of more. Tune in every third Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio for more frequency boosting conversations. And if you want more help getting into your Flourish flow and stepping into the possibilities of more, you can find me at BethLarsenCoaching.com. That's BethLarsenCoaching.com. Larsen with an E.